There's something special about knowing these words will be the last sounds you hear before drifting off to sleep. We've carefully distilled each sentence, each idea, to create a safe space where your mind can let go and rest. Imagine sitting alone in a dimly lit hospital waiting room at 3 in the morning. The fluorescent lights hum their monotonous song, a persistent electrical drone that has become the soundtrack to your vigil. Outside, rain taps against the tall windows like hesitant fingers, each drop seeking entry, but finding only cold glass. The sound is hypnotic, almost meditative. If you weren't so bone tired, that meditation feels like a luxury from another lifetime. You've been here for hours now, waiting for someone who barely knows you're coming. A distant cousin's friend, a colleague's neighbor, someone who mentioned, almost in passing, that they'd be alone for this procedure. And you, as always, said yes. Of course you'd be there. Of course you'd sit through the night. Of course you'd sacrifice your sleep, your plans, your own needs, because that's what kind people do, isn't it? The vinyl chair beneath you has grown warm from your body heat, conforming to your shape in a way that would be comfortable if comfort were something your body still remembered how to feel. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. You don't need to look to know what it is. Another friend asking if you can help tomorrow. Can you watch their dog? Can you cover their shift? Can you listen to their problems for just an hour or 2 or 3? Your thumb hovers over the screen. The word yes forms in your muscle memory before your conscious mind even processes the request. But something stops you this time. Some small voice buried deep beneath layers of performance and programming whispers a question you've been avoiding for years. What about me? This is the landscape of chronic kindness. Silent, exhausting, invisible to everyone but the person living it. This is the waiting room, where the endlessly kind spend their lives sitting in uncomfortable chairs under harsh lights waiting for permission to leave that never comes. Because to leave would be selfish, to say no would be cruel, to put yourself first would be unforgivable. There exists a peculiar exhaustion that belongs only to the endlessly kind, not the tiredness that comes from physical labor, though that can be measured and treated with rest. Not even the fatigue of mental work, which resolves with sleep and distance. No, this is something deeper. A soul weariness that comes from giving what you cannot afford to lose. It accumulates in the spaces between your thoughts, in the moments when you catch your reflection and wonder when you started looking so hollow. This exhaustion has a name, though we rarely speak it in polite company. It is the shadow side of kindness, the place where virtue curdles into something unrecognizable. It's the dark side that nobody wants to acknowledge, because acknowledging it would require admitting that kindness itself, the quality we've been taught to value above almost all others, can become toxic. That the very thing we think makes us good can destroy us from the inside out. We live in an age that worships kindness as an absolute good. Scroll through social media and you'll see it everywhere. Acts of generosity celebrated and shared stories of self-sacrifice, going viral movements built entirely around the mandate to be kind. Self-help culture preaches compassion as if it were a simple muscle that needs only exercise to grow stronger. Mental health campaigns remind us to be kind, as though kindness carries no complexity, no cost, no darkness lurking in its depths. But in 1978, a psychologist named Christina Maslach was studying healthcare workers when she first identified what she called burnout, a syndrome born not from cruelty, but from care without boundaries. Her research revealed something that should have revolutionized how we think about helping professions, about caregiving, about kindness itself. Those who give the most, she found, are often those who suffer the most profoundly. The helpers were being destroyed by their own helpfulness. The kind were being killed by their kindness. And yet decades later, we still haven't learned the lesson. If anything, we've doubled down on the demand for endless compassion. We've turned kindness into a performance metric, a social currency, a measure of moral worth. We've created a world where saying no feels like a sin, and setting boundaries feels like building walls against humanity itself. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, or perhaps as sleep drifts away from you, as it so often does when you've spent the day attending to everyone but yourself, we will explore the paradox at the heart of human goodness. That kindness itself can become a form of violence when directed only outward, never inward. That compassion without self-care is not noble sacrifice, but slow suicide. We will trace this shadow through the corridors of history, from ancient philosophers who understood the necessity of self-preservation to modern psychologists quantifying the cost of boundaryless giving. We will examine the myths and stories that have tried to warn us the fairy tales with darker truths hidden in their happy endings. We will look at the neuroscience of empathy and discover why our brains were never designed for the kind of infinite compassion our culture demands. And perhaps, most importantly, we will confront the uncomfortable question that sits at the center of this exploration. What if the kindest thing you could do is learn to be selfish? What if the world doesn't need more martyrs, but more whole people? What if your exhaustion is not a badge of honor, but a cry for help you've been too kind to hear? Consider for a moment the weight of what you carry. Not just the practical tasks, the favors, the emotional labor, the endless availability, but the invisible burden of other people's feelings, their disappointment if you say no, their judgment if you prioritize yourself, their need that seems to validate your existence even as it drains it. This burden didn't appear overnight. It accumulated slowly like sediment, settling at the bottom of a river layer upon layer of yeses that meant no smiles that covered exhaustion, sacrifices that felt mandatory rather than chosen, until one day you looked down and realized you couldn't remember the last time you asked yourself what you actually wanted. Couldn't remember the last time "I don't want to" felt like sufficient reason to decline. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." But what happens when all your attention flows outward? When you've become so skilled at attending to others that you've forgotten how to attend to yourself? When the very capacity that makes you valuable to others has made you invisible to yourself? The rain continues outside, the lights continue humming, and somewhere in this threshold, between waking and sleep, between giving and taking between the person you've been and the person you might become. A truth waits to be acknowledged. Kindness has a dark side, and it's time to turn on the lights. Let us begin with what seems simple, but is anything but what is kindness. At its most basic, kindness can be understood as compassionate action, motivated by genuine care for another's well-being. It's the impulse to alleviate suffering when you witness it. The desire to contribute to another's happiness. The recognition that we are all connected, that your pain diminishes me, and your joy enlarges the world we share. But even in this simple definition, complications arise. Because kindness as it manifests in the real world, in the messy reality of human relationships and psychological wounds and cultural conditioning, is rarely this pure. Scratch the surface of most acts of kindness, and you'll find a tangle of motivations, some noble, and some considerably less so. There is kindness that flows from abundance, from a place of genuine overflow. This is the kindness of someone who has tended their own garden first, who gives because they have enough, and to spare. Their yes is meaningful, because their no exists. Their generosity costs them something, certainly, but it doesn't cost them everything. It doesn't cost them themselves. And then there is what we might call shadow kindness. This is compassionate performance, motivated not by care, but by fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear of losing love or approval, or the fragile sense of worth that comes from being needed. This is kindness as survival strategy learned early and practiced so long it becomes indistinguishable from identity itself. The distinction between these two forms is not always clear even to the person performing the kindness. You might genuinely want to help someone and simultaneously be terrified of what saying no would mean about you. Human motivation is layered, complex, often contradictory. But the effects of these two types of kindness are dramatically different. Kindness from abundance increases over time. It creates genuine connection, mutual respect, sustainable relationships built on choice rather than compulsion. It feeds both the giver and the receiver. It expands the circle of care without depleting anyone within it. Shadow kindness depletes over time. It creates resentment, exhaustion, relationships built on unspoken expectations, and silent scorekeeping. It feeds neither the giver nor the receiver, but rather creates a dynamic of dependency that serves no one's actual growth. It contracts the self even as it tries to expand care for others. Consider 3 ways of framing this distinction. Physically, kindness is an energy exchange. You have a finite amount of energy at any given time. When you give from your reserves, you can replenish with rest and care. But when you give from your depletion, you create a deficit that compounds over time. Your body keeps the score even when your mind refuses to count. Temporarily, we can distinguish between situational kindness and chronic kindness. Situational kindness responds to a specific need with a specific act. Your neighbor's car breaks down, you give them a ride. A friend loses a parent, you sit with them in their grief. These acts have natural boundaries defined by the situation itself. Chronic kindness, by contrast, has no natural endpoint. It becomes a pattern, a role, an identity. You become the helper, and the needs never stop coming, because needs never do. Psychologically, the most crucial distinction is between authentic and performative kindness. Authentic kindness arises from an internal sense of care and choice. You help because you genuinely want to, because it aligns with your values, because it brings you meaning, even when it costs you comfort. Performative kindness arises from external pressure, real or imagined. You help because you should, because people expect it, because not helping would shatter the image you've carefully constructed of yourself as a good person. The tragedy is that performative kindness often looks identical to authentic kindness from the outside. The exhausted nurse staying late looks the same as the energized one choosing an extra shift. The resentful friend listening to another crisis looks the same as the compassionate one offering genuine support. We cannot see the internal experience, the motivation, the cost, and so we celebrate both equally, holding them up as examples of human goodness without recognizing that one is sustainable and life-giving, while the other is a slow form of self-destruction. True kindness flows from wholeness. It includes the self in the circle of compassion. When you act with authentic kindness, you might be tired. Afterward, you might have expended energy and time and resources, but you don't feel diminished. You feel aligned. You've acted in accordance with your values, chosen, freely given, from a place of genuine care. Shadow kindness excludes the self from consideration entirely. It treats your needs as less important, your boundaries as obstacles to overcome your exhaustion, as irrelevant. When you act from shadow kindness, you feel depleted afterward, diminished, used. You might try to suppress these feelings, telling yourself you should be happy to have helped, should feel good about being needed. But beneath the should is a quiet truth: you've abandoned yourself again. And abandonment, no matter how kindly disguised, always has consequences. There's a particular emotional signature to shadow kindness that once you recognize it becomes unmistakable. After you help someone, there's a moment, maybe an hour later, maybe that night as you're trying to sleep, when a thought crosses your mind unbidden. They didn't even say thank you. Or, I wonder if they'd do the same for me. Or simply a heaviness in your chest that feels like disappointment mixed with resentment. This is your body's wisdom trying to tell you something. Not that the person you helped is ungrateful, but that you gave from depletion rather than abundance. That your yes came from fear rather than love. That somewhere in the exchange you abandoned yourself. The authentic giver doesn't keep score because the act itself was its own reward. They gave because they wanted to, because it aligned with their values, because it brought them meaning. The outcome, gratitude or ingratitude, reciprocity or taking, doesn't determine their emotional state afterward. But the shadow giver keeps meticulous score even while denying they're doing so. Every act is recorded, every sacrifice noted. The ledger grows, and with it, the resentment that will eventually poison the very relationships the giving was supposed to nurture. The tension between self-care and other care is not new. Humans have been wrestling with this paradox for as long as we've been capable of abstract thought. Let us trace this thread through time, watching how different eras understood the balance or imbalance between giving to others and preserving the self. In the ancient world of Greece and Rome, the Stoic philosophers developed a sophisticated understanding of duty and self-preservation. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his meditations during stolen moments between the demands of ruling an empire, understood something profound about sustainable virtue. He wrote, "Do not act as if you had 10,000 years to live. While you have life in you, while you still can make yourself good. But what the Stoics understood, and what modern kindness culture often forgets, is that making yourself good required rigorous self-discipline, not self-erasure. The Stoics practiced what they called oikaiosis, a concept that's difficult to translate, but might be understood as the process of appropriation or familiarization. It described how care naturally begins with the self and expands outward in concentric circles. You care for yourself first, then your family, then your community, then humanity at large. This wasn't selfishness. It was structural wisdom. You cannot care for circles farther out if you've collapsed at the center. Epictetus taught his students, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Know yourself, tend yourself, understand your own nature and limits. Only then can you effectively help others. The Stoics recognized that unlimited giving was not virtue, but vice. It represented a lack of wisdom, an inability to understand natural limits, a failure to recognize that you are part of the ecosystem you're trying to care for. If you destroy yourself through endless giving, you haven't saved the world. You've removed one more person capable of genuine care from it. As we move into the medieval Christian era, we encounter a different philosophy, one that would shape Western attitudes toward kindness for centuries. The Desert Fathers of the 3rd and 4th centuries fled to the Egyptian deserts, seeking isolation and God. To many, this looked like the ultimate selfishness. The world was full of suffering, full of people who needed help, and these holy men withdrew to caves and wilderness. But the Desert Fathers understood something crucial. They called it the tyranny of human need. They recognized that need is infinite, that if you structure your life around meeting every need you encounter, you will be destroyed by the very compassion that motivates you. So they withdrew, not out of hatred for humanity, but out of recognition that they could not serve anyone effectively if they were overwhelmed by everyone's demands. Saint Anthony the Great spent 20 years in absolute isolation. When he emerged, people sought his wisdom. Critics called him selfish for those wasted years. He responded with a clarity born of solitude. A man who wishes to live in solitude must cease to be a judge. Stop measuring your worth by how much you sacrifice. Stop evaluating yourself through the lens of others' expectations. Yet medieval Christianity also gave us the martyr complex, the glorification of suffering for others as the highest form of spiritual devotion. The saints were those who gave everything, endured, everything, sacrificed everything. Their reward was in heaven, not on earth. But the message was clear. True holiness required total self-abnegation. Thomas à Kempis, writing in The Imitation of Christ in the early 15th century, tried to balance these tensions. First, keep peace with yourself, he wrote. Then you can bring peace to others. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot model peace if you're at war with your own needs. The church of this era recognized the danger in even virtuous actions. They called it vainglory, seeking glory or approval even in acts of charity. Because kindness performed for approval corrupts both the giver and the receiver. The giver becomes dependent on external validation, performing virtue rather than living it. The receiver becomes an instrument for the giver's ego, rather than a fellow human. worthy of genuine care. As we enter the Renaissance, we see a shift toward humanism, toward integration of the self, rather than its denial. Michel de Montaigne, writing his essays from the Tower Library, where he'd retreated from public life, argued passionately for self-knowledge as the foundation of virtue. It is an absolute perfection, he wrote, to know how to get the very most out of one's own self. Montaigne rejected the medieval split between self-care and virtue. He argued that authentic kindness requires self-knowledge, that you cannot truly help others if you don't understand your own nature, your own limits, your own contradictions. He wrote, "We are I know not how double within ourselves, which is the cause that what we believe, we do not believe." This doubling, this split between who we perform being and who we actually are, creates the conditions for shadow kindness. When we don't know ourselves, when we haven't examined our own motivations and fears and needs, our helping becomes performative. We give not from genuine care, but from the part of ourselves that desperately needs to be seen as caring. Erasmus in his brilliant satire, "In praise of folly, mocked the holy fools, who sacrifice everything for appearances, while ignoring the actual conditions of their souls." True charity, he argued, must begin with honest self-assessment. If you don't know why you're helping, if you haven't examined whether your generosity comes from love or fear, or the desperate need for approval, then your kindness is built on sand. The Renaissance gave us a revolutionary idea that self-knowledge and virtue are not opposed, but integrated. That knowing yourself, caring for yourself, developing yourself is not separate from caring for others, but foundational to it. The Age of Enlightenment took this further. David Hume, writing in his Treatise of Human Nature, recognized that sympathy is a very powerful principle in human nature. We are wired for empathy, designed to feel what others feel. But Hume also identified the danger of what he called excessive sensibility, emotional overwhelm that comes from unchecked sympathy. When you feel everything, everyone around you feels you become paralyzed rather than mobilized. Your empathy becomes a form of suffering rather than a motivation for effective help. Adam Smith, known more for his economics than his philosophy, wrote extensively about moral sentiments. He introduced the concept of the impartial spectator, an internal observer who balances self-interest with concern for others. Smith argued that the person who sacrifices everything for others becomes an object of pity, not admiration. True virtue, he believed, maintains what he called propriety, appropriate limits that allow for sustainable care. The Enlightenment philosophers discovered something that their medieval predecessors had glimpsed but couldn't fully articulate. Kindness without self-preservation is not noble. It's psychologically unsustainable. It violates the natural order in which organisms must maintain themselves to function within their ecosystems. And then we arrive at modern psychology, at Christina Maslach in the 1970s, studying helping professionals and naming what she saw burnout. She found that those who care most suffer most. Nurses, social workers, therapists, teachers, the people society depends on to carry our collective care, were being destroyed by the weight of that care. Herbert Freudenberger, who coined the term burnout in 1974, while working in free clinics, observed something paradoxical. The dedicated and committed are most at risk, he noted. the very qualities that make someone excellent at helping: deep empathy, strong commitment. Personal investment are the same qualities that make them vulnerable to total collapse. He recognized the pattern. Idealistic helpers enter their professions full of energy and hope. They pour themselves into their work. They overextend, ignore their own needs, sacrifice their own well-being for those they serve, and then they deplete. Their compassion turns to cynicism. Their dedication curdles into detachment. The very kindness that defined them becomes the source of their collapse. By the 21st century, the World Health Organization officially recognized burnout as an occupational phenomenon. But our culture still frames it as individual failure rather than systemic issue. We tell burned out helpers that they need better self-care, as if the problem is their resilience rather than the impossible demands we place on them. What history teaches us, if we're willing to listen, is that humans have always known that unlimited kindness is unsustainable. From the Stoics to the Desert Fathers, from Renaissance humanists to Enlightenment philosophers to modern psychologists, the message is consistent. Care must include the self, or it becomes destruction. We've built a society that demands endless kindness, but provides no infrastructure for sustainable giving. We celebrate martyrs while creating the conditions that manufacture them. And we wonder why our kindest people are also our most exhausted. Let us be clear, kindness is not the problem. Authentic kindness is one of the most beautiful and powerful forces in human experience. When kindness flows from genuine care, from a place of choice and wholeness, it creates transformation. Research from the University of British Columbia in 2012 demonstrated this clearly. Participants who performed acts of kindness for 6 weeks showed measurable increases in happiness, reductions in cortisol, and improvements in immune function. But here's the crucial detail that often gets lost when this research is cited. These benefits only appeared when the kindness was chosen, not obligated. When you help someone because you genuinely want to, because it aligns with your values and brings you meaning, your brain releases oxytocin. This neurochemical creates feelings of bonding and connection. It reduces stress and promotes healing. Acts of authentic kindness literally make you healthier, happier, more connected. Kindness contributes to identity formation in profound ways. Erik Erikson's stages of development include a phase he called generativity versus stagnation in middle adulthood. During this stage, people need to feel they're contributing to something beyond themselves. They need to care for the next generation, to leave the world better than they found it. Generativity creates meaning and purpose. But Erikson also warned that generativity without self-integrity leads to depletion. You must maintain a core sense of self while giving to others. If you lose yourself in the service of others, you haven't achieved generativity. You've fragmented into pieces distributed among everyone but yourself. From an evolutionary perspective, kindness makes perfect sense. Robert Trivers's concept of reciprocal altruism explains how helping others can serve your own survival. In small tribal groups, the person you help today might save your life tomorrow. Cooperative bonds increase the entire group's fitness. We evolved to be kind within tribes of around 150 people, where reciprocity was possible and relationships were ongoing. But our modern context has changed dramatically. We're expected to care not about a small tribe where everyone knows everyone, but about millions of strangers. Social media brings us face to face with suffering across the globe, instant and overwhelming. Our biology hasn't evolved to handle empathy at this scale. Our nervous systems are still designed for tribal level care, but we're being asked to operate at a global level. This mismatch between our evolutionary design and our modern reality creates profound problems. The kind person today isn't just helping their tribe. They're overwhelmed by the suffering of billions accessible through every screen, demanding response, creating guilt when that response isn't forthcoming. When kindness comes from authentic care and operates within sustainable boundaries, it creates beautiful things. Genuine connection, mutual trust and reciprocity, a sense of purpose and meaning, increased life satisfaction for both giver and receiver. These are the gifts of true kindness. But when kindness becomes compulsive, when it operates without boundaries, when it's driven by fear rather than love, everything inverts. This is where we must turn toward the shadow, toward the aspects of kindness that our culture refuses to examine. Because kindness, when it becomes chronic and boundaryless, when it's performed from fear rather than choice, doesn't just fail to help, it actively harms. Compassion fatigue was first identified in healthcare workers, but we now recognize it everywhere. The symptoms are clear: emotional numbness, physical exhaustion, that rest doesn't resolve cynicism, and detachment, reduced empathy, even when you desperately want to care. Sleep disturbances and physical complaints that have no clear medical cause. A study published in the American Journal of Nursing in 2018 found that 78% of nurses reported compassion fatigue. The leading cause wasn't the work itself, but the inability to say no to additional demands. Nurses who couldn't set boundaries, who felt obligated to take every extra shift, who couldn't protect their recovery time, were the ones who burned out. The mechanism is straightforward. Mirror neurons in your brain fire when you witness someone in pain, creating an empathic response. You literally feel their suffering in your own pain centers. This is beautiful. When it happens occasionally, when you have time to recover between empathic experiences. But when you're constantly exposed to others' suffering without boundaries, your mirror neuron system becomes overwhelmed. Your empathy circuits, flooded with constant activation, eventually shut down as a protective mechanism. What we call compassion fatigue is really empathy system burnout. Your brain, unable to sustain constant activation of pain centers, simply stops responding. You become numb, not because you stopped caring, but because your nervous system has reached its limit and shut down to protect itself. This leads to what psychologists call self-abandonment. Chronic kindness without boundaries creates a progressive loss of self. You stop knowing who you are without your helping role. Your identity becomes so fused with being needed that you can't distinguish your authentic desires from your compulsion to give. You suppress your own needs so consistently that you lose track of what they are. Someone asks, "What do you want?" and you genuinely don't know. You've spent so long asking, "What do they need?" that your own wants have become foreign, almost threatening. Resentment accumulates in the spaces where your needs should have been expressed. Every time you say yes, when you mean no. Every time you give, when you want to receive. Every time you smile through exhaustion, A small deposit of anger is made into an account you're not consciously keeping. But your body keeps it. Your unconscious keeps it. And eventually, that account comes due. The relationship dynamics become profoundly dysfunctional. When you have no boundaries, you inadvertently train the people around you to have none either. They learn that you'll always say yes, always be available, always sacrifice. They learn that your needs don't need to be considered because you never consider them yourself. This isn't their fault. You're teaching them how to treat you through your own behavior. The person who keeps taking from you isn't necessarily a villain. They're simply responding to the pattern you've established, the dynamic you've created, through your inability to say no. Donald Winnicott, the British psychoanalyst, wrote about the false self that develops when a child learns to prioritize others' needs over their own authentic expression. The true self, with its genuine desires and needs and boundaries, gets buried. A false self emerges designed entirely to please and accommodate and avoid rejection. For the chronically kind person, this false self becomes so dominant that the true self might as well not exist. You become a stranger to yourself. The person everyone knows as so kind, so generous, so selfless is a performance, a construct. And beneath that performance is someone you haven't met in years, if ever. This is self-abandonment. And self-abandonment, despite how we might disguise it in the language of virtue, is a form of violence. It's violence you commit against yourself, slow and subtle and socially sanctioned, but violence nonetheless. The kind person becomes a casualty of their own kindness. And the tragedy is that everyone celebrates them for it. To understand kindness at its deepest level, we must descend from the realm of psychology into the world of archetypes. Carl Jung taught us that certain patterns repeat across human cultures and throughout history, universal images and stories that shape how we understand ourselves and the world. The caregiver is one of these primal archetypes. Every culture has stories of the nurturing figure, the one who protects and provides, the mother, the healer, the shepherd, the wise elder who tends to the community's needs. This archetype carries profound power and beauty. In its light aspect, the caregiver embodies unconditional love, selfless devotion, the creation of safety, and the protection of the vulnerable. The caregiver sees suffering and cannot turn away. The caregiver finds meaning in service, purpose, in tending to others' needs. At its best, the caregiver archetype represents humanity's capacity for love that transcends self-interest. But Jung insisted that every archetype contains both light and shadow. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow it casts. And the shadow of the caregiver is vast and terrible. In its shadow aspect, the caregiver becomes the martyr, the one who suffers endlessly for others and keeps a careful tally of that suffering, the one who enables weakness rather than supporting strength, the one who controls through care, who creates dependency, because being needed is the only way they know how to feel valuable, the one whose self-sacrifice is not noble, but pathological, not generous, but desperate. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why terrifying? Because accepting yourself completely means accepting that your kindness might not be as pure as you've told yourself, that your generosity might serve your ego as much as it serves others, that your self-sacrifice might be driven by fear of rejection rather than love of humanity. This is the martyr wound. It begins early, often in childhood. A child learns that love is conditional, that affection must be earned through performance, that their value lies in what they provide rather than who they are. The child discovers that when they put others first, when they're helpful and agreeable and accommodate everyone's needs but their own, they receive praise, attention, the appearance of love. This lesson embeds itself in the nervous system. It becomes automatic, unconscious. By adulthood, the pattern is so deeply grooved that it feels like identity itself. I am a kind person. I am someone who helps. I am the one people can count on. These aren't just descriptions. They're the bars of a cage built from your own desperate need to be valued. The shadow collects everything you've suppressed in service of this identity. All the anger you swallowed, all the needs you denied, all the times you wanted to scream, "What about me?" but smiled instead. This shadow grows with each act of forced kindness, feeding on your unexpressed truth, until it becomes a kind of monster dwelling in your unconscious. Jung taught that the only path forward is individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating both light and shadow. You cannot skip the shadow. You cannot pretend your kindness has been pure when it's been laced with fear. You cannot heal by doubling down on the pattern that wounded you. Individuation requires facing an uncomfortable truth. My kindness has been a mask for fear. This doesn't mean your past acts of care were false. It means they were complex, layered with motivations you didn't fully understand. And your future kindness can be different. It can be conscious. It can include yourself in the circle of care. The integrated caregiver gives from wholeness, not emptiness. Knows their limits and honors them. Can receive as well as give. Doesn't need suffering to feel worthy. This is the goal. Not to stop being kind, but to stop using kindness as a shield against your own unexamined fears. Greek mythology offers us a perfect illustration of shadow kindness in the figure of Prometheus. You likely know the story. Prometheus, one of the Titans, looked upon humanity and saw them suffering in darkness and cold. The gods had fire, but humans did not. Prometheus, moved by compassion, stole fire from Mount Olympus and gave it to humanity. His punishment was severe. Zeus chained him to a rock where an eagle came each day to eat his liver. Each night, the liver regenerated. Each day, the torture repeated. Eternal suffering for his gift to humanity. We're taught to see Prometheus as a hero, a benefactor who sacrificed himself for human progress. But look at the story through the lens of shadow kindness, and a different pattern emerges. Prometheus didn't ask humans if they wanted fire. He didn't consider whether they were ready for it or what consequences it might bring. He saw suffering and couldn't tolerate it. So he gave what he thought they needed, regardless of whether he had the right to give it, regardless of the cost to himself. This is the pattern of the compulsive giver. You see someone suffering and you can't bear it. Not because of their pain necessarily, but because of your own discomfort with witnessing pain. So you give, you fix, you sacrifice. Not for them really, but to alleviate your own psychological distress. Notice that Prometheus took what wasn't his to give. He stole divine fire. In psychological terms, he overstepped his boundaries. He took responsibility for something that wasn't his responsibility. This is what chronic helpers do constantly. We take on problems that aren't ours to solve, burdens that aren't ours to carry, responsibilities that belong to others, and the liver that regenerates each night. This is perhaps the most haunting detail. Prometheus can never heal because the pattern continues. Each day brings new suffering. Each night brings regeneration just enough to endure another day of suffering. This is the experience of the boundaryless giver. You give until you're destroyed. You rest just enough to give again. The wound never heals because the pattern never stops. The myth contains another layer worth examining. Prometheus was eventually freed by Heracles, but only after thousands of years of torment. The rescue required intervention from outside. Someone else had to break the chains. This reflects a truth about compulsive giving. You often cannot free yourself. The pattern is too deeply embedded. You need help, support, someone to say, "This has to stop," when you've lost the ability to say it yourself. But here's what the myth doesn't tell you. Prometheus could have said no to begin with. He could have recognized that humanity's development, like all development, requires struggle. That solving everyone's problems for them prevents them from developing their own strength, their own ingenuity, their own fire. The question the myth leaves us with: was Prometheus's gift truly generous? Or was it a form of theft, stealing from humans the opportunity to discover fire themselves, to grow through their own effort, to own their progress, rather than remaining forever in debt to their benefactor? The compulsive giver creates dependency while calling it care, solves problems while calling it help, takes away growth opportunities while calling it compassion. The myth warns us compulsive giving doesn't save the world. It destroys the giver. And giving that comes from your inability to tolerate others' pain, rather than your genuine care for their well-being, is not kindness. It's your own pain projected onto them, your own need to fix and control, disguised as compassion. One of the most famous parables in the Western tradition is the story of the Good Samaritan. A man is beaten by robbers and left for dead on the road. A priest passes by without helping. A Levite passes by without helping. But the Samaritan, a member of a despised ethnic group, stops, tends his wounds, takes him to an inn, and pays for his care. We're taught that this parable illustrates the essence of compassion. The priest and Levite representatives of religious establishment fail the test of basic humanity. The Samaritan, the outsider, demonstrates true kindness. But let's examine this story through the lens of sustainable care. What if we ask different questions? Did the Samaritan check his own capacity before helping? What if he had urgent business? What if he had dependents waiting for him? What if stopping meant endangering himself? The parable is used culturally to shame boundaries. If you don't help everyone you encounter who's suffering, you're like the priest and Levite passing by on the other side. You're morally failing. But sustainable kindness requires discernment. It requires asking, who can I help? How much can I give? What are the limits of my responsibility? If the Samaritan made a practice of helping every person in need, he encountered neglecting his own responsibilities and relationships in the process. Is that still virtue? Or has it become compulsion? Imagine a shadow version of this story. The Samaritan stops for every wounded traveler. He spends his fortune on inn fees. His own family suffers from neglect. He arrives home exhausted. resentful, wondering why no one helps him the way he helps everyone else. He dies depleted, having saved strangers while losing himself. This isn't a condemnation of helping. It's a question about sustainable compassion. Can you help this person without abandoning your other responsibilities? Do you have genuine capacity to give, or are you giving from your depletion? Are you helping because you want to, or because you're terrified of what not helping would mean about you? The parable teaches compassion, but it's been weaponized to shame anyone who dares to have limits. And that weaponization has created a culture of exhausted helpers who keep stopping for wounded travelers while becoming wounded themselves. Perhaps no children's book has done more damage to our understanding of healthy relationships than Shel Silverstein's The Giving Tree. Published in 1964, it's been read to millions of children as an example of beautiful, unconditional love. Let's review the story. A tree loves a boy. The boy takes her apples to sell. She gives them happily. He takes her branches to build a house. She gives them happily. He takes her trunk to make a boat. She gives it happily. Eventually, she's reduced to a stump. An old man returns the boy, now aged, and sits on the stump. The tree was happy, the book tells us. Generations of readers saw this as touching, as representing selfless love. But read it again with clear eyes, and you'll see it's not a love story. It's a horror story about pathological codependency. The tree has no boundaries. She gives everything, including the very substance that keeps her alive, until she's destroyed. And she calls this destruction happiness. This is delusion, not love. The boy never learns gratitude. He never learns reciprocity. He never develops the capacity to give, because everything is given to him without cost. He returns only when he needs something. This is not love. This is training in emotional parasitism. What are we teaching children with this story? That love means giving everything, even if it destroys you. That if someone takes from you without reciprocity, you should be happy they want you. That your worth lies in what you can provide. And when you can't provide anymore, you're reduced to being furniture for someone else's comfort. A healthier version of this story would have the tree saying, "I'll give you my apples because I have plenty and you need food. But I need my branches to live. I need my trunk to grow. I cannot give you everything without ceasing to be a tree." And the boy would learn, I cannot have everything. I must respect limits. The tree's life matters too. Both would survive. Both would grow. The relationship would be based on mutual respect rather than extraction. We give this book to children. We teach them from the earliest age that self-destruction in the name of love is noble. And then we wonder why we have an epidemic of people who cannot set boundaries, who give until they collapse, who mistake their depletion for virtue. The Giving Tree is not a manual for love. It's a warning about what happens when kindness has no limits. The tree should have said no. And we should teach our children that saying no is sometimes the kindest thing you can do. Consider what happens to children who internalize this story's message. They grow into adults who believe that love means total availability, that caring means erasing your own needs, that the measure of devotion is how much you're willing to lose of yourself. These children become the teenagers who can't say no to friends' demands, who are taken advantage of repeatedly, who wonder why they feel so empty, despite being so nice. They become the young adults who stay in abusive relationships because love means sacrifice. They become the parents who give everything to their children and then resent those children for taking it. And all along, they're following the script they learned from a tree that mistook self annihilation for love. Let us add one more story to our collection, this one from Buddhist tradition, offering a different perspective on the limits of care. A woman's young son dies. Grief stricken, she carries his body from house to house, begging for medicine to bring him back to life. Finally, she encounters the Buddha, who tells her he can help. But first, she must bring him a mustard seed from a household that has never known death. Full of hope, she goes door to door. At each house, she asks, "Has anyone in this home died?" Every household has lost someone: a parent, a child, a grandparent, a friend. Finally, she understands. Death is universal. Suffering is universal. Her grief, while profound, is not unique. The teaching here is subtle. The Buddha didn't say, "Your pain doesn't matter," because everyone suffers. He led her to recognize that she cannot exempt herself or her loved ones from the fundamental conditions of existence. For the chronic helper, there's a related truth. You cannot save everyone from suffering. Suffering is woven into the fabric of life. Your compulsion to fix, to rescue, to eliminate all pain is not compassionate. It's a denial of reality. Some suffering serves a purpose. It teaches. It transforms. It creates the pressure that leads to growth. When you rush in to eliminate all discomfort, you may be stealing someone's opportunity to develop their own strength. The mustard seed parable asks, can you be with suffering without needing to fix it? Can you witness pain without making it your responsibility to eliminate? Can you offer presence without trying to rescue? This is the boundary many helpers cannot hold. We see pain and we must act. But sometimes the most compassionate response is simply to acknowledge, this is hard. I see you. I'm here. Without trying to solve, fix, or take the burden away. In the tarot, the hanged man appears as card 12. The image shows a man suspended upside down, hanging by one foot from a tree or wooden beam. His hands are bound behind his back. Often a halo appears around his head, suggesting holiness or enlightenment. His facial expression varies depending on the deck, but often appears peaceful, resigned, or eerily content. Traditional interpretations focus on sacrifice, surrender, seeing from a new perspective. The hanged man represents letting go, releasing control, accepting what is. But through the lens of shadow kindness, the hanged man reveals something darker. He represents the chronic giver, frozen in a pattern of self-sacrifice that has become identity itself. Consider the inverted position. The hanged man sees the world upside down. From this perspective, normal self-care appears selfish. Healthy boundaries look like cruelty. Saying no seems impossible, even monstrous. His inverted view has become his only view. He can no longer imagine standing upright. His hands are bound behind his back. He cannot act on his own behalf. He's paralyzed by shoulds. I should help. I should give. I should sacrifice. His agency has been surrendered not to divine will, but to the expectations of others, real or imagined. He hangs suspended, neither progressing nor dying. Time passes, but he doesn't evolve. He's stuck in this position, this role, this identity, as the one who sacrifices. The suspension becomes comfortable in its familiarity, even as it prevents all growth. And then there's the halo. The reward for his suffering is being seen as good, as holy, as selfless. This halo is his payment, his compensation for the pain of suspension. But it's also his trap. To stand upright to cut himself down would mean losing the halo. And if he's not the good one, who is he? When the hanged man appears reversed in a reading, it traditionally signals martyrdom without purpose, suffering for its own sake, refusal to free oneself from outdated patterns. The chains are loose. He could escape, but he doesn't. He chooses to remain because the identity of the suffering one has become more important than freedom. The lesson of the hanged man for the chronically kind is this: sometimes the sacrifice you need to make is to cut the rope, to free yourself, to stand upright, to suffer the loss of the halo, and discover who you are without it. True enlightenment isn't perpetual suspension. It's knowing when to hang and when to drop, when to sacrifice and when to preserve yourself. It's having the wisdom to choose rather than being trapped in an identity you constructed from fear. Jung wrote, "The shadow is the person you would rather not be." For the kind person, the shadow contains everything that contradicts the self-image of endless compassion. And when that shadow is not integrated, when it's denied and suppressed, it doesn't disappear. It grows more powerful in the darkness, eventually emerging in destructive ways. The shadow of the caregiver manifests in several forms, each one a distortion of genuine care. First, there is the controlling caregiver. This is the person who gives, but always with strings attached. Their help comes with expectations, spoken or unspoken. They know what's best for you better than you know yourself. Their care becomes a form of domination. "I sacrificed so much for you" becomes a weapon creating debt and guilt and the obligation to conform to their vision of how you should live. Second, there is the resentful martyr. This person gives and gives but keeps a meticulous internal ledger. Every act of kindness is recorded. Every sacrifice is noted. When the accounts don't balance, when the gratitude or reciprocity doesn't match the giving, rage erupts. But because expressing anger directly would contradict their identity as the kind one, it comes out sideways. Passive aggression, guilt trips, silent treatment. The message underneath: after all I've done for you, this is how you treat me. Third, there is what we might call the identity parasite. This person needs others to be broken so they can feel whole. Their sense of worth depends on being needed. So unconsciously, they sabotage others' growth and independence. They rescue when they should step back. They solve problems others need to solve themselves. They create dependency because "you need me" is the only truth that makes them feel valuable. Fourth, there is the competitive altruist. This person must outgive everyone else. Kindness becomes a performance, a way to establish superiority. "I'm a better person because I sacrifice more than you do." Their generosity is not about care, but about winning an invisible contest of virtue. These shadow manifestations appear everywhere once you start looking for them. The mother who sacrificed everything for her children and never lets them forget it, using guilt as currency to control their adult lives. The friend who helps everyone but holds silent grudges erupting periodically with accusations about being unappreciated. The activist who burns themselves out and becomes bitter, cynical, contemptuous of the very people they claimed to serve. The therapist who loses all boundaries with clients needs them to need her lives through their stories because her own life feels empty. How do you recognize the shadow in yourself? Ask these questions. Do I feel good after giving or only during? If you only feel good while helping, but feel depleted afterward, you're using kindness as a drug, not expressing genuine care. Do I give because I want to, or because I'll feel guilty if I don't? If guilt is the motivation, you're imprisoned, not kind. Do I get angry when my help isn't appreciated correctly? If yes, you were giving to get something, not to give freely. These are uncomfortable questions. They reveal that your kindness might not be as pure as you've believed. But this recognition is not failure. It's the beginning of integration. It's the first step toward kindness that comes from wholeness rather than woundedness. Let us now turn from the realm of archetype and symbol to the concrete world of neuroscience. Because the damage of shadow kindness is not merely psychological or spiritual. It's written into your very biology. When Charles Figley coined the term compassion fatigue in 1995, he called it the cost of caring. He was studying therapists, social workers, and other helping professionals who were showing symptoms eerily similar to PTSD, but without having experienced trauma themselves. They had absorbed the trauma of those they cared for. Compassion fatigue is measured today through the Professional Quality of Life Scale, which assesses 3 dimensions: compassion, satisfaction, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress. It can be distinguished from simple burnout. Burnout is gradual work-related and generally responds to rest and time away. Compassion fatigue is sudden empathy-related and requires deeper intervention because it represents a fundamental change in how you relate to others' suffering. Burnout says, "I can't do this work anymore." Compassion fatigue says, "I can't feel this anymore." One is exhaustion. The other is emotional amputation, a protective shutdown of the very capacity that made you good at caring in the first place. Barbara Oakley introduced the term pathological altruism in 2011 to describe helping behavior that causes harm either to the helper through depletion, to the helped through enabling dysfunction, or to the relationship through creating resentment and dependency. Her research revealed something crucial. Not all helping is equally depleting. Forced helping, driven by obligation or guilt or fear, actively harms both parties. Chosen helping, motivated by authentic care and bounded by realistic limits, benefits everyone involved. The difference isn't in the action, but in the motivation and context. 2 people might perform identical acts of kindness with completely different outcomes, based on whether they're choosing freely or performing compulsively. Your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and compelling imagination, between your pain and empathically felt pain. When you witness someone suffering, mirror neurons in your brain. Fire activated the same regions that would light up if you were experiencing that suffering yourself. The anterior cingulate cortex. Your brain's pain center responds to observed pain almost identically to how it responds to experienced pain. This is the biological foundation of empathy. It's why you wince when you see someone hit their thumb with a hammer. Why you feel a pang in your chest when you watch someone cry. Your brain is literally sharing their experience. This system is beautiful when it operates within natural limits. You witness suffering. You feel empathy. You're motivated to help you help if you can. Then you recover. the empathic activation resolves. You return to baseline, but for the chronic helper, there is no return to baseline. You're constantly exposed to suffering through your work, your relationships, your social media, feeds the news, the endless stream of need that characterizes modern life. Your mirror neurons are firing constantly. Your pain centers are chronically activated. Studies using fMRI technology have confirmed this. Researchers like Tanya Singer have shown that empathic responses create actual pain responses in the brain. Your brain treats others' suffering as your suffering. This is not metaphorical. It's neurologically literal. The result is that helpers' brains exist in a state of chronic activation that wasn't designed for. Your stress response system, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is meant to activate temporarily in response to threat, then return to rest. But when you're constantly absorbing others' pain, the HPA axis never fully deactivates. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, remains elevated. This creates a cascade of effects: weakened immune function, increased inflammation, cardiovascular problems, disrupted sleep changes in appetite and weight, increased risk for depression and anxiety. Studies from the University of California have shown that professional caregivers show accelerated cellular aging equivalent to about 10 years compared to non-caregivers. The biological reality is stark, endless kindness literally shortens your life. The pattern of shadow kindness doesn't emerge in adulthood. Its roots are in childhood, in the attachment relationships that shape your nervous system's expectations about connection and care. John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth's attachment theory reveals how early relationships create templates for all future relationships. A child with secure attachment learns, "My needs matter. I can ask for help. I'm valued for who I am, not what I do. Others' needs also matter, and we can balance care between us." This child grows into an adult who can give without losing themselves. They can help others while maintaining boundaries. They experience kindness as choice rather than compulsion. But a child with anxious attachment learns something different. I must earn love through performance. My needs are secondary. I'm only valued when I'm useful. Love is conditional on my behavior. This child becomes hypervigilant to others' needs and emotions, constantly scanning for how to please, how to accommodate, how to avoid rejection. They develop what researchers call compulsive caregiving, given not from genuine care, but from desperate need to prevent abandonment. Studies by Philip Shaver and Mario Mikulincer have shown that anxiously attached adults display higher rates of compassionate behavior than secure adults, but also much higher rates of burnout. Their caregiving is motivated by fear rather than love, and fear-based kindness is unsustainable. The developmental pattern often follows a predictable trajectory. From ages 0 to 5, the child learns whether their needs will be met or dismissed. A child whose cries are consistently ignored learns that their needs don't matter. A child whose autonomy is punished learns that boundaries are dangerous. From ages 6 to 12, roles solidify within the family system. Often the kind child becomes the helper, the peacemaker, the one who manages others' emotions. They may be praised for this role, told they're so mature, so responsible, but they're learning to prioritize everyone's needs but their own. In adolescence, this identity crystallizes. They become known as the nice one, the reliable friend, the person everyone comes to with problems. By adulthood, the pattern is unconscious, automatic, indistinguishable from identity. The critical period is around ages 2 to 3, what Erik Erikson called autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is when children are supposed to learn that it's safe to have preferences, to say no, to assert their will. If this autonomy is punished or shamed, if compliance is the only path to parental approval, the child learns that boundaries equal rejection. This lesson embeds itself in the nervous system, not just as a belief, but as a physiological response. Saying no triggers a threat response. The body believes that rejection equals survival danger. This is why chronic helpers experience such intense anxiety around setting boundaries. Their nervous system is screaming, danger, you'll be abandoned, do whatever they want. The pattern evolves across the lifespan. In young adulthood, from roughly 20 to 40 people often have peak capacity for giving. Energy is high. The body can sustain intense demand without immediate consequences. This is when chronic helpers build their reputation as the reliable one. They say yes to everything. They help everyone. They might feel tired, but not yet destroyed. The debt is accumulating but hasn't yet come due. They're praised for their generosity, valued for their dependability. The positive reinforcement keeps the pattern going. By middle adulthood, 40 to 60, the accumulated exhaustion surfaces. The body can no longer sustain the pace. Health issues emerge: autoimmune conditions, chronic pain, depression, anxiety, stress-related illnesses. What's often called a midlife crisis is frequently the moment when the question erupts: when is it my turn? This is a choice point. Some people double down, convince themselves they're fine, push through the exhaustion. They continue the pattern until it breaks them completely. Others use this crisis as a catalyst for transformation. They begin finally to set boundaries, to say no, to include themselves in the circle of care. In later adulthood, 60 and beyond, two distinct paths emerge. The first path leads to the bitter elder. This person looks back on decades of resentment, of giving that was never truly reciprocated, of self-sacrifice that nobody even noticed. They become withdrawn, cynical, convinced that all people are takers, that kindness is foolishness, that they were exploited for their whole lives. The second path leads to the wise elder. This person has learned, perhaps late, but not too late, to balance giving with self-care. They give from abundance rather than emptiness. They've developed the capacity to receive gracefully, to let others care for them. They've integrated the lesson that kindness must include the self to be sustainable. Research by Laura Carstensen on socio-emotional selectivity theory shows that older adults naturally prioritize meaningful relationships over broad networks. They become more selective about where they invest their limited energy. If they've maintained a sense of self throughout their lives, this selectivity brings peace and deeper connection. If they've abandoned themselves through decades of boundaryless giving, this same selectivity brings isolation and bitterness. The choice you make now, whether to continue the pattern or transform it, determines which elder you become. Let's go deeper into what happens in your brain when kindness becomes compulsive. The discovery of mirror neurons in the 1990s by Giacomo Rizzolatti revolutionized our understanding of empathy. These neurons fire both when you perform an action And when you observe someone else performing that action, they create a kind of neural simulation, allowing you to understand others' experiences by recreating them in your own brain. This is the biological basis for empathy. You see someone in pain, your pain centers activate. You witness joy, your pleasure centers respond. This neural mirroring happens automatically, unconsciously, creating the foundation for human connection and compassion. But here's the flaw in this beautiful design mirror. Neurons don't distinguish between temporary empathy and chronic empathy. They respond the same way whether you're witnessing one person's pain for a moment or absorbing dozens of people's pain constantly throughout your day. For helpers whose lives involve constant exposure to others' suffering, healthcare workers, therapists, teachers, parents, or simply people who've become the designated emotional support for everyone, they know the mirror neuron system is in permanent activation. Research using functional MRI by Tanya Singer and colleagues has shown that the empathic response is neurologically identical to the pain response. When you watch someone you care about receive a painful shock, your anterior cingulate cortex lights up exactly as it would if you received the shock yourself. Think about what this means for the chronic helper. Your brain is treating other suffering as you're suffering hour after hour, day after day, year after year. Your pain centers are chronically activated. Your stress response is permanently engaged. The consequences cascade through every system. The HPA axis, your body stress response system, is designed for acute activation. Threat appears. Cortisol is released. You deal with the threat, cortisol returns to baseline. But when you're constantly absorbing others' stress, your HPA axis never returns to baseline. Elevated cortisol over time creates widespread damage. Your immune system weakens, making you more susceptible to illness. Inflammation increases throughout your body, contributing to everything from arthritis to heart disease to increased cancer risk. Sleep becomes disturbed because cortisol interferes with melatonin production. Weight regulation becomes difficult as cortisol affects metabolism and appetite. A study from the University of California examining professional caregivers found evidence of telomere shortening, a marker of cellular aging, equivalent to approximately 10 years of accelerated aging compared to non-caregivers. Let that sink in. Chronic caregiving ages you at the cellular level. The cost of boundaryless kindness is measured in the very length of your life. But perhaps even more concerning than physical aging is what happens to the brain itself through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself based on experience. When you spend years hyper-focused on others' needs and emotions, your brain adapts. Gray matter decreases in regions associated with self-awareness and self-referential thinking. The default mode network, which activates when you're not focused on external tasks and allows for self-reflection, shows reduced activity. Meanwhile, reactivity and empathy networks increases. You become hypersensitive to others' emotional states. Your sensitivity to others' needs becomes so acute that you pick up on subtle cues others might miss. This might sound like a superpower, but it's actually a vulnerability. You can't turn it off. You're constantly scanning, constantly responding, constantly adjusting yourself to manage everyone's emotions. The insula, a brain region involved in interoception, the The awareness of your body's internal state shows altered functioning in chronic helpers. This means you may lose the ability to accurately detect your own hunger, fatigue, pain, or emotional state. Your internal radar becomes calibrated entirely to external signals. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute found that meditation practices focused on compassion activated different neural circuits than those focused on empathy. Empathy feeling. What others feel activated pain and distress circuits. Compassion. Caring about others' well-being without absorbing their pain activated warmth and affiliation circuits. This distinction is crucial. Empathy without boundaries creates suffering. Compassion with boundaries creates connection. The chronic helper has developed an overdeveloped empathy system at the expense of balanced compassion. Research by Richard Davidson has shown that these changes are not permanent. Compassion meditation practices, particularly those focused on self-compassion, can rebuild the neural circuits associated with self-awareness. But the key is that simply resting doesn't rewire the brain. You need active practice in redirecting attention toward yourself with the same care you give others. Your brain has become a finely tuned instrument for detecting and responding to others' needs. But the circuits for detecting and honoring your own needs have atrophied from lack of use. The neuroscience reveals something our culture doesn't want to admit. You are not built for infinite empathy. Your nervous system has limits. Your brain requires recovery time. The demand for endless compassion is a demand for something neurobiologically impossible. And when you try to meet an impossible demand, your system breaks down. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Let's examine the empirical research that quantifies the cost of shadow kindness across different domains of human experience. In cognitive psychology, research by Daniel Westphal and colleagues has documented what they call psychic numbing. When people are exposed to large-scale suffering, their capacity to respond with appropriate empathy actually decreases. This is the brain's protective mechanism. Faced with overwhelming need, the compassion system shuts down rather than risk total collapse. Chronic helpers show a related phenomenon. When faced with multiple people needing help simultaneously, they experience decision paralysis. Everything feels urgent. They can't prioritize effectively, so they either try to help everyone and collapse under the weight, or they freeze and help no one. This same research shows memory impairment from chronic stress. The hippocampus, crucial for forming new memories, is particularly vulnerable to elevated cortisol. This creates the eerie feeling many chronic helpers report. Where did the years go? I can't remember the last time I did something for myself. They can remember in great detail the people they've helped, the problems they've solved, the crises they've managed, but their own experiences, their own joys and desires, and moments of rest are lost in a fog. Their life has been happening in service of others, while their own story remains unwritten. In social psychology, research by Francis Flynn and Joel Brockner has identified what they call matcher-taker dynamics. They categorize people into 3 types based on how they approach reciprocity givers, who prefer to contribute more than they receive. Matchers who seek balance and reciprocity, and takers who prefer to receive more than they contribute. They're finding givers without boundaries attract and maintain relationships primarily with takers. why matchers don't need constant help. They reciprocate and move on, but takers provide endless need and givers need to be needed. This creates a toxic symbiosis. The giver's identity requires someone to save. The taker provides endless opportunities for rescue. The relationship is stable, but profoundly unhealthy for both parties. The giver becomes increasingly depleted. The taker becomes increasingly dependent and entitled. And here's the painful twist: it's the giver who maintains this dynamic. They could choose to invest in relationships with matchers, people who would reciprocate their care. But matchers don't satisfy the psychological need that drives shadow kindness. Matchers don't make you feel like a hero, like the indispensable one, like the only person who cares. Additional research from Yale has documented what they call the reputation trap. Once you're labeled the helpful one, requests for help increase by approximately 40%. Your ability to say no decreases because the social cost of disappointing people rises. The longer you maintain the role, the harder it becomes to change the pattern. You become trapped by your own reputation. The identity you've constructed becomes a cage. In clinical psychology, a meta-analysis by Gary Morse and colleagues examining helping professionals found depression rates 2.5 times higher than the general population, and anxiety rates 3 times higher. But critically, this wasn't true for all helpers. The protective factor was boundaries. Helpers who reported the ability to say no, who maintained regular self-care practices, who kept some separation between their helper identity and their personal identity, showed normal mental health rates. The risk factor was enmeshment. Helpers who said, "I can't say no, my worth comes from helping," or "I feel guilty taking time for myself," showed dramatically elevated rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. The conclusion is clear. It's not helping that causes psychological pathology. It's boundaryless helping. It's the erasure of self in service of others. It's shadow kindness. Treatment approaches that have shown effectiveness all share a common element: redirecting compassion inward. Compassion-focused therapy, developed by Paul Gilbert. Self-compassion training, researched extensively by Kristen Neff. Dialectical behavior, therapy's interpersonal effectiveness skills. Narrative therapy approaches that help people rewrite their helper identity. All of these recognize that the chronic helper has developed expert-level compassion for others while maintaining zero compassion for themselves. The healing requires balancing that equation. In the specific domain of healthcare, the statistics are stark. The American Nurses Association reported in 2020 that 62% of nurses experience burnout. The leading cause is not the technical demands of the work, but the impossible emotional demand to care deeply about every patient, while facing conditions that make adequate care impossible. High patient ratios mean nurses cannot possibly meet all the needs they witness. This creates what's called moral injury. The psychological wound of knowing better care is needed, but being unable to provide it. Nurses leave the profession not because they stop caring, but because caring, while unable to adequately help, becomes unbearable. Hospitals lose 17.5% of nursing staff annually at a cost of $40,000 to $64,000 per lost nurse. But the cost to the nurse themselves, PTSD-like symptoms, relationship, breakdowns, substance abuse. Some leaving healthcare entirely cannot be measured in dollars. The healthcare system, like many institutions in our society, requires boundaryless giving to function at current funding and staffing levels. Then it blames individuals for not being resilient enough when they break under impossible demands. This is systemic abuse disguised as individual failing. Perhaps most sobering physicians have the highest suicide rate of any profession at 1.87 times the general population. Contributing factors include a culture of martyrdom, where good doctors sacrifice, inability to show weakness or vulnerability, chronic exposure to suffering without adequate support, and systems demanding superhuman output from human beings. The archetype of the kind doctor, who works 100-hour weeks and never complains, is literally killing people. The very image we hold up as ideal is creating conditions for suicide. Not everyone is equally vulnerable to compassion fatigue. Personality traits, attachment styles, and temperament all influence how kindness affects you. Research on the Big Five personality traits shows that high agreeableness predicts both helping behavior and burnout risk. People high in agreeableness have difficulty saying no, tend to over-accommodate, and prioritize harmony over their own needs. When high agreeableness combines with high neuroticism, the tendency toward anxiety and emotional instability, you have the perfect storm for compassion fatigue. The desire to help combines with anxiety about disappointing people, creating compulsive giving driven by fear. High conscientiousness shows mixed effects. Organization and structure can help with boundary setting, but perfectionism increases internal pressure. The conscientious helper thinks, I should be able to help everyone perfectly. If I'm struggling, I'm failing. The optimal profile for sustainable kindness appears to be moderate agreeableness, combined with low neuroticism and high self-compassion. In other words, caring about others without being driven by anxiety, and treating yourself with the same care you extend to others. Attachment style also plays a crucial role. People with anxious attachment in helping professions are at particularly high risk. Their core wound is, I'm not enough. Helping becomes a way to prove worth. But no amount of proof is ever enough. So the helping continues endlessly driven by an impossible need to finally feel valuable. Avoidant attachment creates lower compassion, fatigue risk, because emotional walls prevent the deep empathic engagement that leads to burnout. But those same walls prevent the deep connection that makes helping meaningful. The avoidantly attached helper is protected, but disconnected. Secure attachment creates the best outcomes. Securely attached people can help without losing themselves. They can receive help when needed without shame. They experience giving as choice rather than compulsion. For those who developed insecure attachment, all is not lost. Attachment can shift through therapy and corrective relational experiences. Most sustainably kind helpers have done significant work on their own wounds. They've moved from unconscious helping driven by childhood programming to conscious helping based on adult choice. Finally, temperament matters. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people shows that approximately 20% of the population processes stimuli more deeply, feels empathy more intensely, and becomes overwhelmed more easily. HSPs in helping roles have beautiful capacity for deep care, but also high vulnerability to burnout. HSPs need even stronger boundaries than others. more recovery time between empathic engagements, more selectivity about who and when to help. Without these adjustments, the sensitive helper experiences severe rapid burnout. The point is not that some people are doomed to burnout while others are immune. The point is that self-knowledge is crucial. Understanding your vulnerabilities allows you to compensate, to build in extra protection, to honor your unique needs. Charles Figley mapped the typical stages of compassion fatigue in a model that many helpers recognize with painful clarity. Stage 1. Idealism. You enter helping with energy optimism, boundaryless enthusiasm. I'm going to make a difference. I have so much love to give. I can help everyone. This stage feels wonderful. You're full of purpose and possibility. Stage 2. Irritability. Reality sets in. People don't appreciate your help the way you expected. Problems are more complex than you thought. Your efforts don't create the change you envisioned. You feel frustrated, confused. Why don't they follow my advice? Why isn't this working? Why don't people appreciate what I do? Stage 3. Withdrawal. You start pulling back not from conscious choice, but from depletion. You become less emotionally available. You might still go through the motions of helping, but you're not really present. Cynicism creeps in. Nothing I do matters anyway. People are going to do what they're going to do. Stage 4. Zombie state. You're completely numb. You show up. You perform the required actions, but you feel nothing. Not compassion. Not even resentment. Just emptiness. You're dissociated from your own experience, going through motions that have lost all meaning. Stage 5. Crisis point. Two paths diverge here. Path A is breakdown. You leave the helping role entirely often, with bitterness and a sense of total failure. You might leave the profession, end the relationship, cut off contact. You emerge convinced that helping was a mistake, that people are selfish, that you were exploited. Path B is breakthrough. You undergo radical boundary restructuring. You face the shadow. You recognize that your helping was driven by wound rather than wholeness. You grieve the identity you're releasing, and you rebuild a new relationship with kindness, one that includes yourself. Most people oscillate between stage 3 and stage 4 for years, never reaching the crisis point that would force change. They function in a state of chronic depletion that becomes normalized. This is just how life is. This is the cost of being a good person. But it doesn't have to be. The crisis point, painful as it is, offers the possibility of transformation. The alternative model, developed by Krista Neff, shows what protects against this progression: self-compassion. Her research identifies 3 core components. First, self-kindness versus self-judgment, treating yourself with the same warmth and understanding you'd offer a good friend rather than harsh criticism. Second, common humanity versus isolation, recognizing that struggle and imperfection are part of the shared human experience, not personal failures that isolate you. Third, mindfulness versus over-identification, holding your painful thoughts and feelings in balanced awareness rather than being consumed by them. Neff's research consistently shows that self-compassion predicts sustainable helping. People who are kind to themselves don't burn out the way people who are harsh with themselves do. Not despite their boundaries, but because of them. The most effective long-term helpers treat themselves with the same care they give others. They recognize their own humanity, their own limits, their own worthiness of kindness. This is not selfishness. This is wisdom. Stop. Put down whatever comfortable story you've been telling yourself while listening to this. You know the one. The story where you're just a good person trying to help. Where your exhaustion is noble. Where your resentment is ungrateful people's fault. Where you're the victim of a world that takes without giving back. Let me tell you what's actually happening. You're not being kind. You're being a coward. And I don't say that to hurt you. I say it because someone needs to. And the people in your life are too busy benefiting from your self-destruction to be honest with you. The truth is this. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you're lying. Every time you smile through exhaustion, you're performing. Every time you give what you cannot afford to lose, you're committing a slow violence, not against them, but against yourself. And self-violence, no matter how kindly disguised, is still violence. Let's talk about the monster you've been feeding. Here's how it works. Here's the pattern you've been living, probably for so long you can't remember any other way. Step 1. The ask. Someone needs something. Doesn't matter who. Could be your boss, your partner, your friend, a stranger online asking for emotional labor. Doesn't matter what they need. Your nervous system recognizes it immediately. Opportunity to prove worth. Step 2. The panic. In the split second before you respond, terror floods your system. If you say no, they'll be disappointed. And disappointment is unbearable. They'll think you're selfish. And being seen as selfish feels like death. They'll leave you. And abandonment feels like annihilation. These aren't rational thoughts. You don't consciously think them. They happen in your body, in your nervous system, in the oldest parts of your brain that learned long ago that rejection equals survival threat. Step 3. The yes. You say yes, not because you want to, not because you have genuine capacity to give, but because saying no feels like stepping off a cliff into infinite darkness. The yes is automatic, compulsive, inevitable. Step 4. The resentment. You do the thing, and while you're doing it, something dark grows inside you. Why am I the only one who helps? Nobody cares about me. I'm so tired. This isn't fair. But you don't say any of this. You smile. You perform. You maintain the image of the kind person who helps willingly, joyfully, effortlessly. Step 5. The depletion. You finish. You're emptier than before. Your energy is lower. Your resentment is higher. But you've earned another hit of the drug that's killing you. The brief, fleeting sense that you're valuable because you're needed. Step 6. Return to step 1. Because the next ask is always coming. And you're addicted to the relief that comes from being needed, even as that need is draining your life force. This is the loop. This is the cycle. This is the pattern that's destroying you. And here's what makes it truly insidious. You blame them. You blame the people who ask. You resent them for accepting what you offered. You're angry at them for taking what you gave. But here's the truth. You cannot face. They didn't do this to you. You did this to you. Every yes was your choice. Every boundary you didn't set was your responsibility. Every moment you abandoned yourself, you did it willingly, consciously, repeatedly. Because facing that truth that you've been complicit in your own destruction is more terrifying than blaming others. Let me be even more specific. Think about the last time you said yes, when everything in your body was screaming no. Maybe it was staying late at work, again. missing another dinner, another bedtime, another moment of your life you'll never get back. Your boss didn't force you. They asked. You could have said no. But the fear of being seen as uncommitted, as not a team player, as someone who doesn't go the extra mile, that fear made the choice for you. Maybe it was agreeing to host another holiday meal when you're exhausted, when you're overwhelmed, when you just want 1 year where someone else does the work. Your family didn't force you. They expected it, yes. But expectations are not commands. You could have said, not this year. But the guilt, the thought of disappointing them, of being seen as selfish, made the choice for you. Maybe it was listening to a friend's crisis for 2 hours when you had your own crisis you needed to process. They didn't force you. They asked if you had time. You said yes, even though you didn't. Even though you needed someone to listen to you. But the belief that your needs are less important, that being a good friend means endless availability, that belief made the choice for you. These weren't instances of them doing something to you. These were instances of you abandoning yourself. Over and over and over. And the most insidious part, each time you do it, it gets easier. The neural pathway deepens. The pattern strengthens. The abandonment becomes automatic, unconscious, so deeply habitual, you don't even recognize it as a choice anymore. You just know you're tired, you're resentful, you're wondering why everyone takes from you and nobody gives back. But you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't, why do they take? The question is, why do I keep giving what I can't afford to lose? Let's go deeper than you want to go. Let's examine why you do this. Not the surface reasons, the deeper ones. The ones you don't admit even to yourself. You keep giving because of identity protection. If you're not the kind one, who are you? You've built your entire self-concept around being helpful, being generous, being the person who's always there. To stop would require meeting yourself, the self you abandoned years ago. And that's terrifying. What if there's nothing there? What if underneath the performance, you're empty? You keep giving because of superiority. This is uncomfortable, but it's true. You feel morally superior to the selfish people. You're better than them, more evolved, more spiritual, more caring. This gives you secret satisfaction. Your martyrdom is your throne. You're suffering, yes, but you're suffering nobly. And that makes you special. You keep giving because of control. When you're needed, you're not powerless. You can't control whether people love you. Love is too mysterious, too conditional, too likely to be withdrawn. But you can control whether they need you. And need is more reliable than love. So you make yourself indispensable. You become the one they can't live without. And as long as they need you, you have power. You keep giving because it lets you avoid your own life. If you're busy saving everyone else, you don't have to face your own unlived dreams, your own unresolved pain, your own terrifying freedom to choose what you actually want. Helping others is easier than helping yourself. Fixing their problems is simpler than facing your own. Being needed by them is less scary than being alone with yourself. The brutal question, are you kind because you love humanity or because you hate yourself? But let's be clear, you didn't invent this pattern. You inherited it. You were programmed by 1,000 subtle messages from the moment you were born. In childhood, you heard, good girls share everything. Big boys don't cry, they help. Stop being selfish. Translation: your needs are shameful. Your wants are wrong. Your value lies in what you do for others. In school, you got gold stars for compliance punishment for boundary setting. Team player was valued over individual needs. You learned objecting makes you difficult. Accommodating makes you good. Many religious traditions, in their cultural applications, if not their core teachings, told you, "Blessed are the meek. Turn the other cheek. Die to yourself." Translation: self-erasure is holy. Suffering is spiritual. Your life matters less than your service. In the workplace, you heard, "We're a family here," which really means we're going to exploit your loyalty, whatever it takes, which really means kill yourself for the company. Team player, which really means no is not an option. The media showed you heroes who sacrifice everything, mothers who give up dreams for children and smile about it, kind people who never have needs, never get tired, never say no. Social media told you, perform your kindness, document your giving, prove your worth through visible selflessness, make your compassion shareable. Every institution you've moved through has trained you to believe your value equals your utility to others. Your worth equals what you produce for them. Your lovability equals what you sacrifice. And here's the truly evil part. When you break under this impossible demand, when you burn out, when you collapse, the system doesn't say the demand itself is inhuman. The system says you weren't resilient enough. You need better self-care. Translation: work harder on yourself so you can work harder for us. You should have known your limits. Translation: your breaking is your fault, not ours. They pathologize your boundaries, not their exploitation. For women, the programming has been especially intense. Centuries of conditioning that caretaking equals feminine virtue, that ambition is unfeminine, that saying no makes you bitchy, or cold, or selfish. Result: women perform 75% more emotional labor than men, according to research. Burnout rates among women are significantly higher. For men, it's different poison, but poison nonetheless. Kindness equals weakness. Vulnerability is shameful. Asking for help is emasculation. Result: men who are kind carry shame about it, or they overperform heroic, helping to prove masculinity, sacrificing themselves to demonstrate strength. Both genders trapped, both dying from different angles of the same lie. Your humanity is conditional. Your worth must be earned. Your needs don't matter. This is the matrix you're living in, and you can't transform the pattern until you see it clearly. Carl Jung taught that everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Your shadow contains all the rage you've swallowed, all the no's you didn't say, all the times you wanted to scream, "What about me?" but smiled instead. This shadow grows with every act of forced kindness. Every time you help when you don't want to. Every time you give when you want to keep. Every time you accommodate when you want to refuse. And here's what happens to shadows you refuse to face. They leak out in ways you can't control. Passive aggression, the sarcastic comment that has a little too much bite, the joke that isn't really funny, the subtle ways you punish people for taking what you offered, sickness, your body says no when you won't, chronic fatigue, mysterious illnesses, pain that has no clear medical cause. Your body is trying to protect you by making it impossible to keep giving. Depression, anger turned inward, When you can't express rage outward, it implodes, creating a heavy darkness that makes everything feel meaningless. Explosions. Years of accumulated pressure find in a crack. You snap at someone you love over something trivial. You rage disproportionately. You shock yourself with the intensity of your anger. Integration requires facing this shadow. Not to wallow in it, but to acknowledge it, understand it, transform it. First, admit the resentment. Say it out loud. I'm angry. I'm tired. I feel used. Not to blame others, but to acknowledge your truth. Second, face the fear beneath the resentment. I'm terrified that if I stop giving, no one will love me. This is the core wound. This is what needs healing. Third, test the fear. Say one small no. See if the world ends. Spoiler, it doesn't. Say another, and another. Let your nervous system learn. Boundaries don't kill you. They free you. Fourth, grieve the identity. You thought you were the kind one. That identity has to die. Let it die. Mourn it. Then become something more whole. I am a person who sometimes chooses kindness. Jung also taught, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Who do you judge? Think about it carefully. The friend who says no easily, so selfish. The colleague who leaves work on time, not dedicated. The person who prioritizes their own needs, self-centered. What you're actually saying is, they're doing what I'm terrified to do. They have freedom I've denied myself. They've chosen the path I'm too afraid to walk. Your judgment is your envy in disguise. Try this exercise. List 3 people who bother you with their selfishness. Now ask, what boundary do they have that I don't? What do they give themselves permission for that I deny myself? That's your roadmap. The things you criticize in others are the things you most need to develop in yourself. You judge the person who says no because you desperately need to learn how to say no. You judge the person who rests because you're dying from lack of rest. You judge the person who puts themselves first because you've put yourself last for so long, you've forgotten you exist. Your shadow is trying to teach you. The question is, will you listen? Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming who you truly are requires asking a terrifying question. Who am I beneath the helping, scary question? Because maybe you don't know. Maybe you've been performing so long that the real you is buried under decades of accommodation and performance. Individuation, becoming whole, requires several steps. First, separate from the collective. Ask, what does society say kind people do? Then ask, what do I actually want to do? Let these be different. Give yourself permission to disappoint the collective expectations. Second, integrate the opposites. You are both kind and boundaried, compassionate and self-protective, loving and limited, not either or. Both and. Wholeness includes contradiction. Third, confront the persona, the nice person mask you wear. What happens if you remove it? Who are you when you're not performing goodness? Can you tolerate being seen as imperfect, difficult, selfish? Sometimes fourth, befriend the shadow. Your anger isn't your enemy. It's your boundary alarm system. Your exhaustion isn't weakness. It's your body's wisdom telling you to stop. Fifth, accept wholeness. You are not all light. You are light and dark, angel and monster, giver and receiver, sacred and profane, whole. And wholeness means sometimes you help, sometimes you don't. Both are okay. Both are human. Both are true. Let's not pretend this transformation is easy. It's not. It's brutal. When you start setting boundaries, people will be confused. Are you okay? You're acting different. Translation. You're not servicing my needs anymore and I don't understand. People will be disappointed. I thought I could count on you. Translation. I counted on you having no limits. Some people will leave. The ones who only wanted what you could give will find other sources. This will hurt. Let it hurt. Feel the grief. Then let them go. You will feel guilty. Your nervous system will scream, danger. You're being selfish. Go back. This is programming, not truth. Sit with the discomfort. It won't kill you. You will doubt yourself. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should just go back to how things were. No, keep going. The doubt is part of the process. You will grieve. The identity you're shedding. The relationships built on extraction. The fantasy that endless giving would earn endless love. Grieve it all. Grief is how we release what no longer serves us. Most people quit here. The loneliness wins. The guilt becomes unbearable. They go back to the loop, to the pattern, to the familiar exhaustion. But if you persist, if you walk through the loneliness and the doubt and the guilt, if you keep choosing yourself even when it feels selfish, something miraculous happens. On the other side of this difficult passage, gifts await you. First, authentic relationships. The people who stay after you set boundaries. Those are your real relationships. Not based on what you provide, but on who you are. These few genuine connections are worth more than 100 extractive ones. Second, chosen kindness. When you give from fullness instead of emptiness, it feels completely different. Joyful rather than depleting. Life-giving rather than draining. Sustainable rather than exhausting. And it's more powerful because it's authentic. Your yes becomes meaningful because your no exists. Third, self-trust. You learn, I can protect myself. I can honor my needs. I can survive disappointing people. This is revolutionary for someone who's always abandoned themselves. This changes everything. Fourth, reclaimed energy. All that energy you spent managing others' emotions, anticipating their needs, performing goodness, it comes back to you. What will you do with it? Who will you become when you're not exhausted? Fifth, peace. Not the peace of numbness, the peace of integrity. When your insides match your outsides. When you say what you mean and mean what you say. When you're the same person, alone and in company. This is the peace that chronic helpers have never known. You know what the world actually needs. Not more self-sacrificing martyrs. Not more people burning themselves out in service of others. Not more exhausted saints collapsing under impossible demands. The world needs whole people. People who've integrated their darkness and their light. People who've set their boundaries and honored them. People who give from overflow, not obligation. People who can look someone in the eye and say, I care about your suffering. I will help if I can. But I will not destroy myself to save you. Because my life matters too. This is not selfish. This is honest. And honesty in a world built on performance and people-pleasing and self-sacrifice is revolutionary. This is the kindness the world actually needs. The courage to be whole. The strength to say no. The wisdom to include yourself in the circle of compassion. Not kindness that erases you. Kindness that includes you. Not kindness from emptiness. Kindness from abundance. Not kindness as performance, kindness as truth. And so we return to that waiting room at 3 in the morning. The rain still taps against the windows, each drop finding its own rhythm. The fluorescent lights still hum their persistent song. The vinyl chair still holds your weight warm from the hours you've been sitting. But something has shifted. Your phone buzzes again in your pocket. Another request. Someone needs something. Someone always needs something. This time your thumb doesn't automatically move toward yes. This time you pause. You breathe. 3 counts in, 3 counts out. You ask yourself, do I have capacity for this? Do I want to do this? Is this mine to carry? And then, and this is the miracle, you listen to your answer. Maybe it's yes. Maybe you genuinely want to help and have the energy to spare. Maybe this aligns with your values and brings you meaning. Maybe it's no. Maybe you're depleted and need to protect your recovery time. Maybe this isn't your responsibility, but it's yours. Your choice. Your decision. Not a performance. Not a compulsion. Not a desperate grab for worth. Just a choice. The choice of someone who's finally learned kindness that excludes yourself is not kindness at all. It's self-abandonment wearing a halo. And you're done abandoning yourself. We've explored how kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. How the very quality we're taught to value above almost all others can turn toxic when it's driven by fear, rather than love when it's performed, rather than chosen when it includes everyone but ourselves. We've traced this truth through history. From the Stoics who understood that care must begin with self-preservation, to the modern psychologists quantifying the biological cost of boundaryless giving. From Prometheus chained to his rock to the giving tree reduced to a stump. From medieval martyrs to burned out nurses in contemporary hospitals. We've examined the science, mirror neurons firing endlessly, HPA axis dysregulated, telomeres shortening, the brain rewiring itself to detect others' needs while forgetting its own, compassion, fatigue as empathy system, burnout. We've faced the shadow, the resentment we don't admit, the superiority we don't acknowledge, the control we disguise as care, the ways we use kindness to avoid our own lives, our own wounds, our own terrifying freedom. And we've discovered the path forward, not by eliminating kindness, but by transforming it, from compulsion to choice, from emptiness to fullness, from performance to authenticity. The dark side of kindness is not that kindness itself is bad. Kindness is beautiful. Compassion is sacred. Care is what makes us human. The dark side is what happens when kindness is divorced from wholeness, when compassion forgets to include the self, when care becomes a one-way street that leads to your own destruction. You have a choice to make. You've always had it, though you might not have realized it. You can continue the pattern. Keep saying yes when you mean no. Keep giving what you cannot afford to lose. Keep collecting resentment like a currency you'll never spend. Keep performing kindness while dying inside. The pattern is familiar. It's known. In a strange way, it's even comfortable. At least you know who you are in this pattern. You're the kind one, the helper, the one people rely on. Strip that away, and who's left? That's the terror, isn't it? The thought that without this role, without this identity built on endless giving, you might be nobody. That the only thing making you valuable is your willingness to deplete yourself for others. But that's the lie the pattern tells you to keep you trapped. Or you can do something different, something that will feel terrifying at first. something that might cost you some relationships, some approval, some of that identity you've clung to for so long. You can choose yourself, not instead of others, not at the expense of compassion, but alongside, equally, with the same care you've been giving away for years. What would it look like to choose yourself? Practically, specifically, in the small moments that make up your life. It might look like saying, "I can't this time," when someone asks for help and you're already depleted. Just those words. No elaborate explanation. No apology for having limits. Just honest acknowledgement of your capacity. It might look like leaving work at the designated end time instead of staying late again. Walking out while others are still working and managing the discomfort of potentially being judged. Trusting that your value isn't measured by how many hours you sacrifice. It might look like telling a friend, "I don't have the bandwidth for this conversation right now. Can we talk tomorrow?" Even though they're upset, even though they need you. Because you've learned that you can't fill from an empty cup, and your cup is empty. It might look like taking a day off just to rest, not to accomplish anything, not to be productive in some other way, just to lie on your couch and stare at the ceiling, because your body is begging for a break. These small acts of choosing yourself will feel monumental at first. Your nervous system will panic. Your inner critic will rage. The guilt will be overwhelming. But each time you do it and survive, you teach yourself something revolutionary. You can disappoint people and still be okay. You can prioritize yourself and still be a good person. You can have boundaries and still be kind. You can learn to say no. You can set boundaries. You can let people be disappointed. You can allow yourself to rest without guilt. You can discover who you are when you're not performing for an invisible audience. You can become whole. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means integration, light and shadow, kindness and boundaries, giving and receiving, yes and no. The whole person can help someone and feel genuinely good about it. Not depleted, not resentful, not keeping score, just satisfied that they chose to give and had the capacity to spare. The whole person can also say no without spiraling into guilt. They can recognize their limits and honor them. They can disappoint someone and survive it. The whole person has relationships built on mutuality rather than extraction. People who give and receive in balance. People who respect boundaries because they have boundaries of their own. The whole person knows their worth doesn't come from what they provide. It's intrinsic. It existed before anyone needed them. It will persist even if they never help another soul. The whole person can sit alone without needing to fill the silence with service. They can be with themselves and not find emptiness. They have done the work of meeting who they are beneath the performance. This is what awaits you on the other side of the transformation. Not a life without kindness, but a life where kindness is one choice among many, rather than the only way you know how to exist. And here's what might surprise you. You may actually become kinder in the truest sense. Not more available, perhaps. Not more accommodating, but more genuinely caring. Because when your kindness comes from choice, rather than compulsion, from wholeness, rather than woundedness, from love rather than fear, it transforms into something pure. Something that doesn't deplete you. Something that actually nourishes both you and the person you're helping. You'll give less, but mean it more. You'll help fewer people, but help them more effectively. You'll say yes less often, but when you do, it will be a full yes, an honest yes, a yes that doesn't carry hidden resentment or secret scorekeeping. The people in your life might be confused at first. The takers will leave, and you'll grieve those relationships even knowing they were unhealthy. But the people who genuinely care about you, not what you do for them, but who you actually are, they'll adjust. Some might even be relieved. I always felt guilty taking so much from you, they might say. I'm glad you're finally putting yourself first. And slowly you'll build a new life. One where you matter as much as everyone else. Where your needs count. Where rest isn't selfishness and boundaries aren't cruelty. A life where you can be kind and whole, both at the same time. Where kindness enhances your life rather than consuming it. This is the promise on the other side of the dark side. Not that you stop caring, that you start caring about yourself too as you drift towards sleep tonight, or as the first light of dawn begins to break through that waiting room window. I offer you an invitation. May you release the burden of endless giving. Put it down. Let it rest. You've been carrying it so long your shoulders have forgotten any other position. May you remember, you are not here to be depleted. Your life is not a resource to be mined until nothing remains. Your energy is not infinite. Your capacity has edges. This is not failure. This is being human. May you discover that the kindness you most need to practice is kindness toward yourself. That voice inside that says, "What about me?" doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest. It makes you whole. And may you finally understand. The monster within was never your anger, never your limits, never your needs. The monster was the belief that love required your erasure, that worth demanded your sacrifice, that belonging meant losing yourself. You can put that monster down now, but putting it down doesn't mean throwing it away violently. It means looking at it clearly for the first time. There's something special about knowing these words will be the last sounds you hear before drifting off to sleep. We've carefully distilled each sentence, each idea, to create a safe space where your mind can let go and rest. Imagine sitting alone in a dimly lit hospital waiting room at 3 in the morning. The fluorescent lights hum their monotonous song, a persistent electrical drone that has become the soundtrack to your vigil. Outside, rain taps against the tall windows like hesitant fingers, each drop seeking entry, but finding only cold glass. The sound is hypnotic, almost meditative. If you weren't so bone-tired, that meditation feels like a luxury from another lifetime. You've been here for hours now, waiting for someone who barely knows you're coming. A distant cousin's friend, a colleague's neighbor. Someone who mentioned, almost in passing, that they'd be alone for this procedure. And you, as always, said yes. Of course you'd be there. Of course you'd sit through the night. Of course you'd sacrifice your sleep, your plans, your own needs, because that's what kind people do, isn't it? The vinyl chair beneath you has grown warm from your body heat, conforming to your shape in a way that would be comfortable if comfort were something your body still remembered how to feel. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. You don't need to look to know what it is. Another friend asking if you can help tomorrow. Can you watch their dog? Can you cover their shift? Can you listen to their problems for just an hour or 2 or 3? Your thumb hovers over the screen. The word yes forms in your muscle memory before your conscious mind even processes the request. But something stops you this time. Some small voice buried deep beneath layers of performance and programming whispers a question you've been avoiding for years. What about me? This is the landscape of chronic kindness. Silent, exhausting, invisible to everyone but the person living it. This is the waiting room, where the endlessly kind spend their lives sitting in uncomfortable chairs under harsh lights waiting for permission to leave that never comes. Because to leave would be selfish, to say no would be cruel, to put yourself first would be unforgivable. There exists a peculiar exhaustion that belongs only to the endlessly kind, not the tiredness that comes from physical labor, though that can be measured and treated with rest. Not even the fatigue of mental work, which resolves with sleep and distance. No, this is something deeper. A soul weariness that comes from giving what you cannot afford to lose. It accumulates in the spaces between your thoughts, in the moments when you catch your reflection and wonder when you started looking so hollow. This exhaustion has a name, though we rarely speak it in polite company. It is the shadow side of kindness, the place where virtue curdles into something unrecognizable. It's the dark side that nobody wants to acknowledge, because acknowledging it would require admitting that kindness itself, the quality we've been taught to value above almost all others, can become toxic. That the very thing we think makes us good can destroy us from the inside out. We live in an age that worships kindness as an absolute good. Scroll through social media and you'll see it everywhere. Acts of generosity celebrated and shared stories of self-sacrifice, going viral movements built entirely around the mandate to be kind. Self-help culture preaches compassion as if it were a simple muscle that needs only exercise to grow stronger.